Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're getting into a topic, hunting, that it really polarizes people, doesn't it?
It really does. And often based on, let's say, incomplete information.
Exactly. If you didn't grow up around it, all the rules, the licenses, the culture, it can seem pretty overwhelming, confusing even.
Sure.
But the sources we looked at argue something different. They say if you actually dig into why people hunt today, the reasons are surprisingly modern. Things like personal health, sustainability,
Well,
and huge conservation funding, which most people don't realize. That's really the mission for you today, to understand the mechanics behind it all.
right.
We're not just listing benefits. We're trying to distill why hunting is often described by experts and hunters themselves as the sort of gateway to, well, they say, a brighter, more sustainable future, covering everything from, what's in your freezer to how wildlife management actually gets paid for.
Yeah, and we have to address the immediate reaction some people have, the perception, maybe for those less familiar, that it's just, quote, mindless killing of animals. That perception is definitely out there.
But the sources push back hard on that.
Mm-hmm.
They argue that for the millions of Americans who actually do it, it's almost the opposite. It's presented as a serious commitment, improving their own lives by contributing to the environment they use.
It's framed as this complete circle, really. The personal benefits, like health, are directly linked in the sources to this civic responsibility for conservation.
Okay, so let's unpack that. We've kind of grouped the arguments from the sources into 5 main areas that explain this connection.
Sounds good. And we'll start with maybe the most tangible one for many people, especially newcomers, the food itself. Putting clean, ethically sourced food on the table.
Right.
The nutritional angle.
Yeah. You hear the term organic food everywhere now. It's a huge deal for consumers.
Massive.
And while organic usually just means, no chemical fertilizers or pesticides, wild game is positioned as something more fundamental, like the original clean food.
Well, that's where the comparison gets interesting, beyond just the buzzword.
Yeah.
Let's actually compare it. Think about typical commercial meat. Livestock often finished on corn or soy, right? And frequently given antibiotics as a preventative measure, just because of the crowded conditions.
Yeah, standard practice in many places.
Wild animals, though, they're living free, eating a diverse, natural diet, whatever the ecosystem provides, and they're constantly moving. This leads to meat that's incredibly lean.
The sources had some numbers on that, didn't they? Like venison versus beef.
They did, often highlighting things like, say, 50% less fat in venison compared to similar cuts of beef. But it's not just less fat, it's the type of fat.
Ah, right, the omega-3s.
Exactly. Wild game generally has a much better ratio of omega-3 to omega-6 fatty acids, healthier fats, and sometimes higher levels of CLA, conjugated linoleic acid, which research links to various health benefits.
So it's leaner and the fat profile is better.
Precisely. And then there's the purity argument, as you might call it. People worry about growth hormones or antibiotic residues in commercial meat.
Definitely a growing concern.
With wild game, it's off the table. It's naturally sourced, zero intervention. You can see how that becomes a really powerful draw for people focused on clean eating.
Absolutely. So you connect those dots. People are more health conscious than ever.
Right.
And suddenly hunting isn't just some old tradition. It's a practical way to stock your freezer with arguably the cleanest protein you can get, a primary motivator for some.
And getting that protein. Well, it's not like going to the supermarket, which brings us neatly to the next point.
Right. It's not passive. So, moving beyond the freezer, let's talk physical health and just being outdoors. There's this myth sometimes that hunting is just sitting quietly.
Yeah, waiting passively.
But the sources really emphasize, no, this is an extremely active activity. It demands real physical effort.
It really does. And it's a specific kind of fitness. It's not just hitting the gym for an hour.
How so?
Well, think about it. You might be walking, sometimes wrecking with gear, half a mile or more in the dark before dawn, just to get to a spot. Or, if you're hunting something like elk out west, you could be doing marathon treks, as one source put it, over really rough, uneven ground, maybe at high altitude, steep climbs, descents.
So serious hiking, basically.
Serious hiking, often carrying weight, sometimes involving bursts of intense activity, then maybe long periods of stillness and observation. It's endurance, it's strength, it's balance, it's functional fitness.
And the payoff for that effort, besides the potential meat, is the setting itself. The sources describe hunting as this unparalleled way to experience the American wilderness, often places far off the beaten path.
Totally. You're not just seeing the viewpoint from the road. You might be deep in the Rockies, watching the sunrise over snow-capped peaks.
Or sitting by the Mississippi River, as one source mentioned, watching these huge flocks of geese, tens of thousands of them, experiences you just don't get on a typical vacation.
And that leads to the mental side, too, in our hyper-connected world.
Yeah, constant notifications.
Hunting is almost a forced disconnect. You have to
Yeah.
be present, observant, quiet. It offers much-wanted solitude, or maybe a deep connection shared with close friends or family, away from all the noise.
A pure way to be outdoors, as they put it.
Yeah, a really fundamental way to engage with the natural world. Mentally refreshing.
Okay, so we have health, physical activity, mental well-being, but here's where the conversation shifts, I think, quite dramatically.
To the bigger picture.
Yeah, the conservation funding. This part is genuinely surprising to many people. Hunting isn't just compatible with conservation. The sources argue it's one of the main drivers of conservation funding in the U.S.
This is probably the most crucial and least understood part of the whole picture. The funding mechanism is unique.
It really is. We need to talk about the money, specifically the Pittman-Robertson Act.
Passed way back in 1937.
And critically, this wasn't a tax imposed on hunters. Hunters themselves requested an 11% federal excise tax on firearms, ammunition, archery equipment.
Self-imposed. Think about that. A user group asking to be taxed to support the resource they use.
It's pretty remarkable. And this Pittman-Robertson tax, it's not discretionary funding. It goes directly from the manufacturers and importers to the Treasury. Then it's apportioned by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service back to state wildlife agencies.
Specifically for wildlife restoration, conservation projects, habitat improvement, and hunter education.
And the dollar amounts are just staggering. Since 1937, that single tax has raised over, what was it, $13.6 billion?
Billion. With a, yeah.
And just in 2020 alone, it brought in $679 million, solely dedicated to wildlife and habitat.
And let's be clear where that money actually goes, because it's not just for game animals people hunt.
Good point.
It funds the purchase and management of millions of acres of public land, wildlife management areas, wetlands, forests that benefit all kinds of wildlife, including non-game and endangered species. It pays for the biologists doing population surveys, the research into wildlife diseases, the habitat restoration projects.
So if your state is reintroducing wild turkeys or monitoring deer health or restoring prairie habitat,
There's a very high chance Pittman-Robertson funds are significantly involved, paid for by hunters and recreational shooters. It's the backbone of state-level conservation funding.
this commitment isn't new either. It goes way back. You found that quote from Theodore Roosevelt.
Yeah, Teddy Roosevelt, a hunter himself and a giant of conservation, he said something like, "Wild animals only continue to exist when they are preserved by sportsmen." He called the genuine sportsman the most important factor in preventing the total extermination of large wildlife.
That's a powerful claim, linking sportsmen directly to species survival.
And it's a view echoed even recently. A 2017 Department of the Interior blog called Hunters the driving force behind funding many of our nation's conservation efforts.
And that drive came from a place of crisis, right? Early 1900s.
Exactly. Witnessing the extinction of the passenger pigeon, seeing the bison nearly wiped out, hunters realized that without active management and funding, wildlife was incredibly vulnerable. So they organized and pushed for these conservation programs and the funding to make them happen.
So when you pull all that evidence together, the narrative that hunters are somehow anti-wildlife just doesn't hold up, according to these sources.
Not at all. The argument is they are, in fact, the primary funders of wildlife conservation and management in the country through this unique user-pays system.
Yeah.
It's about contribution, not just consumption.
An unprecedented model, really.
Absolutely.
Okay, so that brings us to the final pillar, which the sources kind of summed up simply as, it's awesome,
Laugh slightly. Yeah, a bit less technical, that one.
but it acknowledges the personal side, that hunting means different things. For some, it's connecting with heritage. For others, it's the challenge, the self-reliance of providing your own food, or just quality time outdoors with family and friends.
Right, it's about the whole experience. And the sources suggest it fosters personal growth. You have to learn so much: ecology, animal behavior, tracking, marksmanship, field dressing, ethical consideration.
A lot of skills involved. Patience, too, I imagine.
Definitely patience.
Yeah.
And persistence. But the underlying idea is that whatever your specific reason, engaging in hunting deeply connects you to the natural world and makes you an active participant, a provider for nature, not just a taker from it. It fosters a sense of responsibility. So let's try to synthesize this for you, the listener. What does our deep dive tell us?
It seems the argument is that hunting connects these threads. High quality nutrition, right? The clean organic meat,
With significant physical activity and mental focus,
getting you outdoors, disconnected.
all while being underpinned by this massive self-funded conservation engine through Pittman Robertson.
Yeah, it links the personal benefits directly to that broader environmental
Right.
contribution.
And that funding model, it really makes you think, doesn't it? It does. I mean, pose this question to yourself. How many other consumer groups actively lobby Congress to put an 11% tax on their own gear, specifically to fund the resource they enjoy? It's hard to think of another example on that scale. It suggests a really unique level of commitment and accountability.
A sense of ownership, maybe. So, considering where American wildlife was, back in the early 1900s, facing potential collapse, the source is present, starting to hunt today, not just as a hobby,
And much more than that.
but as actively participating in and funding the future of wildlife management in this country. It's a pretty provocative thought. The sources basically end by asking, well, what's the harm in looking into it? You might discover something much deeper than you expect.
A connection to food, to nature, and to a century-long conservation legacy. You just might love it.